Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the Orqa FPV.One pilot goggles. So many of you probably know that I've been using the Orqa goggles as my daily drivers. The primary reason for me using these goggles since kind of they launched, I wasn't a Kickstarter backer, but was the DVR, because I have always kind of struggled syncing my flight audio with DVR. So that's a feature that might not be very important to you. So that's the main reason why I've used the Orqa goggles previously. And of course, these made a lot of buzz when they came out. And I figure a few people, at the very least, are wanting to gather as much information as they can before they might pull the trigger on buying or not. I know in this sort of hobby, we get excited about new shiny things. And so I thought we would do a quick look at these today. Unfortunately, I can't really show you anything inside the goggles as much as I tried to line up different cameras and get a clear image inside the goggles, what we see. If I got it lined up, I got it lined up kind of focused for a moment, a half a second, but it really doesn't do it any justice from what we see in the goggles. So unfortunately, I can't show it to you. But what I can tell you is that the screens do look better. Now, the field of view, or how the size of the screens appear to us, is smaller than it is on the original. And a lot of the specs, I'm just going to leave it to you to read. I don't think there's any reason to go over that. You can read just as well as I can. Get FPV, I think, has an exclusive with Orqa, so they're the ones selling them right now. If there are other sites, I just don't know about them. Maybe down the road, the other sites will start selling the goggles as well. So you can read the specs on your own, but I wanted to give you a quick look if there had any questions. I think the one question I think people have is about Orqa's new digital FPV system. And to me, it does look like it's going to bolt on the front using these three screws, because obviously on their old goggles, and this might be the reason why we have new goggles, they don't have those screws where we do now. And also the connector that goes in here, it's just a ribbon cable as far as I can tell, but I'll show you that as well. If you're not familiar with the Orqa menu as far as how you navigate the settings in the goggles, they're really kind of, I would say, the gold standard. It looks very modern. It's got the Orqa sort of colors to it. It's red, it's black, it's got a nice font, it's easy to navigate. Although I will say that by default it's set up with the left joystick, and I kind of struggled getting my hands around there, but you can switch it over to the right joystick if that's how you want to navigate it, so not that big a deal. I've taken a look at the DVR files of my flights. Doesn't seem to be any difference there from the codec information that I was able to pull off. Looks the same. So screens do look better, but the field of view is smaller. Doesn't have any of the warping of the edges or corners. With the original Orqa goggles, I had trouble seeing the corners. Matter of fact, in several of my videos, you might notice that the OSD elements aren't all the way to the bottom. And sometimes when they were, I had a hard time seeing them. So that could cause some difficulties for me in flight. This one you can see natively in the freestyle mode, the entire screen. They also have a race mode, which then shrinks the field of view a little bit so you can maybe focus a little bit easier. I have never really been one to use that, but that might be a feature that you want to use. Let's take a look at the exterior aesthetics, and we can talk about it a bit more. I'm not hoping to keep you here very long, though. So the first thing out of box for me that I noticed was I get my typical goggle battery. It's just a G&B 3000 milliamp 2S battery, and I plug it in. One of the things I noticed right away was with this new strap design that they've got, which is better for replacing the strap, but you don't get as much of a bite or a hold on your battery with this lead. Now, some people fly with their goggle battery in their pocket, and this, is a much longer cable. In my case, I tend to wear it on the headset, so just be aware you're not going to get a full bite on your goggle battery that you might be used to, because this is extended further out. As a quick comparison between the two, obviously, to replace this goggle battery was much more of a procedure than it will be on the new one, because the little slot that it goes in is much more exposed. Also, yes, I did use some little Velcro straps to make sure my battery stayed in. As far as the buttons go on the front, I mean, some of these design changes are very minor, but everything over on the pilot goggles are much more smooth, much more flush mounted, versus you could feel everything, all the little buttons and stuff kind of stick out on the originals. Now, I didn't have any problems navigating these joysticks or using the joysticks to navigate, and they do press down as well to make different selections. But I did have problems with the buttons and feeling these buttons. and which one I was feeling. I felt, possibly because I've been using them for a long time, much more comfortable finding the buttons on the originals. So a little thing there. Also, you can see I pointed out in the quick specs, we have these 3 screws across the front that we don't have in the new one. That's very likely that they're going to have some sort of module for their HD video reception units on the front here, and then they have this slot in here for their cable, which is just a ribbon cable. I don't know how well I'm going to be able to show this to you, but I will do what I can. Maybe get a flashlight. I don't know how well I'm getting this lined up in there, but hopefully you can see, like right there, that's just a ribbon cable in there. At least it looks like a ribbon cable. I suppose it could be something else. But to me, it just looks like a typical ribbon cable that we find inside of our radios and other equipment, you know, flat ribbon cables. So I suspect with that, if that is actually just a ribbon cable, that, you know, if we want to pontificate about what their new HD video system is going to be like and how it's going to connect, I suspect it's an all-in-one unit where that cable's actually got something holding it that forces it in there and maybe even clips in a touch into maybe that rear lip that we see there, and then screws on here, so kind of a whole assembly. I sure can't envision that a company that seems to pride itself on the design elements of its stuff, that it would have a traditional, you know, industrial looking ribbon cable that you just slot in there, and there doesn't appear to be any way to secure that cable in there, so it's going to have to be something that's kind of got a hold of it, something that's firm that's going to slot it in there for us. So that's something that I thought pretty much everybody would want to see about the goggles, as that connector there. And see if I can get this back in. Okay. Of course, we've still got our bay on the side, just like we do on the other one. We've still got the SD card here in the traditional spot, just like the originals. But here's where our next part, things start to change a little bit. Let me get my antennas out of the way here. So obviously here on the bottom, we have additional adjustments. Instead of just IPD, which is moving the lens back and forth for the distance between our eyes, we also have another focal distance where it can move the screens back and forth. So it can adjust for, you know, visual impairments possibly, or just anything that needs to be different, and it does adjust everything on an individual screen basis. So if you need one closer or further away from that eye than the other, you can make that adjustment. And they are nice and smooth. You probably can't even hear that versus the old one. They may have revised this in manufacturing batches, but one of mine is so stiff. This one moves. It sounds like something in a Lego kit, really, but this other one is so stiff that once I got it to a spot that I felt was focused for me, I didn't move it anymore because I was worried I was going to break the mechanism inside. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't sound right. It sounds harsh. So these are nice and smooth. You can move things in and out. You see the whole thing here kind of moving. And then you use the little wheel to make your adjustment. Inside the goggles, they have a picture. It's actually a very high resolution picture, and that's probably the one thing that I wish I had over here to look at to do a screen comparison. But it's of a bridge that's kind of in a jungle forested area, but it's a very, very sharp and vibrant picture, and they use that for your assistance in focusing your goggles. And you click the joystick and it goes between black and then that picture. There may have been one other picture, I'm just not remembering it right at this moment. So that's kind of how you set up the goggles, and they are nice and crisp. That's, again, the screens are better, but the field of view is smaller. Better is very subjective. I did also camera comparisons between 3 different cameras. I used the Caddx Baby Ratel 2, the Runcam Nano because I'm a micro guy, the Nano 3 with the original lens, as well as the Caddx Ant, again because I've been flying inside with these because we had snow and then we had some melt off here in the last couple days, so it's pretty soggy out, and there's still some snow around as well. So my experience with these is exclusively for flying inside. Of course, if you're new to FPV goggles, keep in mind the Orqa goggles do not come with a receiver. So while they come with this module bay cover, they don't come with the receiver that comes inside. In this case, it's a rapid fire. I think they're selling for 130, 150 bucks. This is a TBS Fusion, which is very, very good as well. And I think that one comes in 100 bucks. And then you have to buy antennas as well. I tend to use a lot of True RC and AXI antennas for my setup, but I do not fly long range. So I tend to use these. One pointed straight out, actually kind of more in a configuration like this, with one horizontal and one straight up to get above my head with the longer one. We have our traditional ports just like you would expect that we have. Let's see, what's this labeled here? I didn't even look at it. So this is for our audio, our microphone here. Those two connectors on this side, and this side must be our HDMI and our AV in. Yeah, we got that micro HDMI again on this side. And of course, we have this bay over here. As far as what it comes with, you get the Velcro piece that you have to stick onto the goggles. That goes underneath here. That's, you know, that part down there. Comes with that Velcro. Comes with this sort of faux leather faceplate. And then it came with kind of a traditional faceplate that's kind of that neoprene spongy foam. And also you get the traditional FPV.One case with a microfiber cleaning cloth. I will say this cloth is nice and thick. It's a silly thing, but at least the cloth they give you is nice and thick. Now, something else that I wanted to do was to compare it to the SkyZone goggles. Because I have told several people that I would probably be using the SkyZone 04X goggles as my daily driver if I had the V2s. Because the V2s have a 60 frame DVR. I'm presuming that 60 frame DVR works at least as good as the Orqa. I'm making some assumptions there. Unfortunately, this is the version 1, which does not have the 60 frames per second DVR. So I think if you're considering the Orqa goggles, you should definitely look at these SkyZones. And some of you are probably saying, well, what about the Fat Sharks? Well, yeah, you can look at the Fat Sharks, but quite honestly, I think all three of these are better than the Fat Sharks. Now, they might cost more, but I think all three of these are better than the Fat Sharks. And this comes with a receiver. The Rapid Mix receiver, which does something similar to what these others are doing. Of course, you know, the company's in China, so you don't have as much communication and involvement with the community. So there we go. I forgot one thing. Let's take a listen to the fan. The fan in my original ones has always annoyed me. Excuse me. The fan in the originals has always annoyed me, and you can see my faceplate is starting to fall apart too. So. The fan in the original has always annoyed me, and some of you have probably heard it in some of my videos as well, especially in those warmer months. I will say the new fan, I shouldn't spoil it. The new fan's quieter, and it also does a much better job of actually clearing the fog from the lens. So if you were flying and you were to reach up and press the fan button in order to get the fog down, it's going to work much faster than it did. Obviously, we have a different fan setup in here as well. This one has two fans, and I believe this one just has one. So 2 fans is always better than 1. 2's better than 1. So let me see if I can get my microphone to pick this up. Hopefully you can hear that. We get a little tone when I press the button. So I was holding it about arm's length there, and I could still hear it, but I'm certain you can hear that. Here, let me kick it on again. One more time. So yeah, the fan is improved, or the fan in mine was never right. Call it what you will. So then it comes down to, who's this for? Who would buy this? Why would you buy it? Well, I think it comes down to a few things, at least when I try to imagine who might buy this. So if you were someone who were looking to get the original Orqa goggles, and you couldn't because they've been out of stock for so long, you would probably buy these. Someone else who might buy these, if you're going all in on the future of Orqa and their FPV, their digital FPV, then yeah, you might be. But some of you were probably saying, hey, I thought these were future-proof. Well, not so much, right? So that's something to consider if you're new to the Orqa ecosystem. These were kind of marketed as future-proof, but they kind of stopped developing this one, and now they have a new goggle for us. There are probably others that are also interested in the new pilot goggles that I'm just not thinking of their particular segment, but those are the two that came to mind to me after looking at the goggles for a little while. Was who would want this? Why would they want this? That sort of thing. There's also, of course, just brand. You know, some people buy a brand's products almost regardless of the change in the product. So that's another possibility. For me, if I had the originals, would I upgrade? Not yet. Not until I see that HD FPV system. Then they give me a reason to upgrade to these, because maybe they'll come out with a way to retrofit for these. I don't know. I doubt it, but I don't know. But when it comes to goggles, if I were buying again right now, as I said a little bit earlier in the video, I would probably pick up the SkyZone. Yeah, I'd probably pick them up. Reception's really good. DVR's really good. Screens are really nice. Very adjustable. They have the same adjustments you can get on the new Orqa goggles that you couldn't get with the original Orqa goggles. The color options, if you want a different color, I'm not particular on this sort of nickel finish, but they have color options as well. The fan's not as good in this one. This one's got a little bit of a noisy fan. Not as bad as my original on the Orcas, but it's not as good as the new fan. So that's just a quick look. I've probably kept you here longer than I intended to. If you are interested in looking at these goggles, I will put a link to the Orqa goggles and the SkyZone goggles from Get FPV's website down in the video description. Of course, that's where all the specs, there's some marketing materials that they've got listed down there too that'll also talk about some various features that they've refined or updated or added. I didn't really find too much noteworthy within the software that's currently on them for me. I'm not everyone, though. I could have missed something that you definitely want. And if anybody's got an idea of how I can stick a camera in these things and actually show it to you with any sort of reasonable quality, I'm all ears. I tried 3 different cameras. 2 of them were cell phones and this camera here. If I got it to focus, it would focus for just a moment and then I would move it and out of focus again. So it was a serious pain in the backside, but I'm willing to try. If you do have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, hopefully I can answer those questions, or maybe someone else can, please leave them in the comment section below. I appreciate your time. And thanks for watching.